Hi guys, welcome. Let's answer more qigong questions. Okay, number one, Egg Wiggly. Egg Wiggy, cool name. Any tips for training while living next to a busy road in a noisy apartment? That's a good question. Yeah, it could be complicated and hard for your nervous system, especially when your mind's going a million miles an hour, to try to meditate when there's a lot of noise around. Everybody goes through that at first. So obvious answer is try to go meditate in a quiet place, but that's not always an option, right? So soundproofing your room is another one, but that's also not an option. So what I tell my students is you can cheat a little bit. So for example, check this out. Go to YouTube, right? You can find stuff like this. Right? I used to do this a lot. This kind of music. I always play it when I'm doing a podcast, but I put it on mute. That way the screen's always going. So you can download or just go to YouTube and play a lot of nature, relaxing music. Play it so loud you can't hear what's going on outside. So most of my students used to do that. But here's the trippy thing. You'll notice usually the 6-month mark, providing you don't miss a day, you actually practice every day, you practice sincerely, is that you would prefer the noise over the artificial sound. And the first time that happened is kind of like a mind trip, right? Because you're sitting. Let's say you're doing basic sitting, nothing crazy. You're just doing sitting. Your mind's going a million miles an hour. And then you ask your teacher, hey, my mind's going a million miles an hour. What do I do? Well, there's two ways to approach it, mentally or physically. If it's mentally, we use a trick called the anchor, really famous technique, common technique, in psychology, right? It's like, hey, well, think about one thing. And then everything else disappears. Everything calms down. All the million thoughts calm down when you think of one. That one could be counting beats. It could be counting your breath. It could be visualizing on something you want to visualize on. You could be working with an organ, whatever. So as you do that, your mind calms down. The second way is forget about using mind tricks. I'm just going to use my energy, use my body. So you can maybe scan the body, breathe a certain way, put your hand in a certain position, which triggers all the blood and all the qi to go into your stomach. When all the stuff goes into your belly, your center of gravity, your stomach, it leaves your head. So you're not up here. So the thinking stops. So that process is hard enough for most people the first few months because we've been conditioned for at least, if you're 20 years old, then 20 years. If you're 30 years old, 30 years to constantly talk. Especially nowadays with all the smartphones, right? I mean, all the iPhones, you're constantly training your brain to think. You can't turn off anymore, and that's driving people nuts. So this process, rather using the mental way, or the energetic way to stop your thinking, even though the techniques are good and proven, it will take a long time and it's difficult. It's already difficult enough, and then you add noise on top of it. You're living in a noisy apartment, you said. Then it could be really challenging. So the way to cheat is to play really loud, natural nature sound. But by your 6th month, as your central nervous system successfully calmed down, like you wouldn't need half an hour. Before you would need half an hour to transfer all your energy thinking from here into your belly, or you might have to use an anchoring mental trick for about half an hour just to get the thoughts to calm down. Within 6 months, if you sincerely practice, that means not skipping a day, doing it for about half an hour to 1 hour a day, then you can move your qi from your head or your thinking to your belly within 5 seconds. As for the anchoring, usually within 5 minutes, everything quiets down. You don't need half an hour anymore. When you get to that stage, what usually happens for most people, let me just play that clip again so the screen keeps going, is that they'd rather turn off the music and listen to the traffic jam. I don't really understand why, but you just don't want artificial sounds. And the noise you hear that's real, it no longer bothers you. You can meditate successfully in a mall or in a bus stop if you like, or right on the SkyTrain or in a taxi cab. It wouldn't matter. People walking around, a lot of noise, it just doesn't bother you anymore. In fact, that's the whole point of meditation, to be the eye of the storm. Instead of like most people, they're demanding the storm to quiet down. I mean, life is a storm. It's chaotic sometimes, and most of us want it to stop. But as we meditate more, we realize we can never stop what's going on out there. We don't control other people. We don't control the weather. We don't control many situations we don't control. Instead, you become the eye of the storm, where you're calm no matter how noisy things are around you, right? One of my favorite paintings in Zen is this person sitting in zazen like this, and he's calm and smiling. And behind him, the temple's on fire, and there's people running around screaming in chaos. This symbol being that's society, that's daily life. Whereas this guy is like calm. And when people see that, they see the humor in it, and they also see the inspiration in it to be that calm. And they kind of think like, wow, that's an ideal. But it's actually not an ideal, it's real. If you practice for about 6 months through the year, you get that calm. You become the eye of the storm. Everyone's running around, chasing, frantic, aggressive, stressed out, and you're calm. But when you get to that level, right, that level of quiet, two things usually happen to practitioners that in my limited 50 years of friends I've met in Hinduism, Buddhism, Christian mystics, and Taoism and martial arts, I find is once they get calm to a certain level, they kind of tend to ignore energetic practices. By that I mean like standing practices that boost their energy. Because they're like, I don't care about that. They kind of stop lifting weights. They kind of stop like stretching. They kind of stop jogging. They don't really pay attention to the body once the mind is refined to the point where they're always pretty much high. They're always blissful. They're always peaceful. They're always loving. They're happy. So I'm like, I don't really care. So it's not uncommon to see the Buddhists or some Taoists to be overweight, out of shape, even looking physically weak. You start to ignore your body when you're already happy, very, very happy emotionally, right? So this idea of being very quiet, you have to be careful and balance it with your body. At first, noise, people, chaos, stressful situation will poke at you and bother you, but as you sit more and more and more, you will calm down a lot. When that time comes, be careful you don't neglect your body. Second thing, when that time comes, be careful you don't flash it. That's why Taoism is called a tradition of whispering. You don't want to be loud about this. This happened to a lot of friends and students in the community, in the meditation community through the years, is usually around a 6 month or 1 year mark, they can't stop smiling 24 hours a day because they have detoxed a lot of trauma, a lot of childhood trauma, a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress that's stored in the cells of the body, and they have successfully released, not all of it, we're not perfect, right? But released quite a bit of it. So they have a sense of joy, but it's not the monkey-driven, dopamine, up-down, spike, moody type of pleasure. It's more like a contentment, serotonin, endorphin kind of, I don't need more kind of contentment. When that happens, if they're not warned by their teacher or seniors, a lot of time they can't turn it off and they just got this grin on their face. And if you live in a place like a big city, people don't really like that. You can trigger people and they get mad because misery loves company, right? So that's the second thing you want to be careful of when you start asking a question. I'm kind of going off the rails here, but how to meditate in a noisy apartment. You're struggling with noise versus calmness. But I'm saying it's easy to be calm. You can cheat your way into it with energetic techniques, anchoring, playing loud nature noise. But I'm just warning you, on your 6 month mark, when you get super calm, don't neglect your body, and you don't have to hide your joy, but try to be more sensitive to people that are miserable so you don't trigger them, because people can have meltdowns really easy nowadays, right? So when you're happy, you kind of have to kind of go, all right, maybe don't, yeah. Anyways, I'll leave you with that. I don't have any more words for that one. But yeah, it's easier to quiet your mind. Just play loud nature stuff. That's just a basic level, right? To set the energetic tone. So don't get too attached to that. Okay, next question. I can't say this name, so I won't. But it says, "Hey Adam, how would I go about beginning the standing meditation? Is there any books or videos you recommend?" That's a very good question. There's tons of standing videos on YouTube, I think. There's a standing meditation book called A Way of Energy. I read that when I was really young, and he's from the I Ching lineage. I find that book pretty good, and if you message the author, I'm sure he can recommend even more books. So yeah, there's a lot of resources of standing out there, but word to the wise, It's not about information, it's about transmission when it comes to Qigong, right? It's very easy to learn. For example, how do you get enlightened in Zen Buddhism? Well, you get enlightened by Zazen. That's the method. Buddha didn't get enlightened under the Bodhi tree by downloading an app or reading a book. It wasn't about the thinking. He sat under the Bodhi tree for 49 years after 5 years of training. So the story goes. So it was a mystical practice of direct experience. Like the Hinduism say, you can talk about water, but until you drink it, you can't cure thirst. It's the same thing with Qigong, right? You can talk about it all day, but until you practice it and taste it, it doesn't mean anything, right? So it's not about information, it's about transmission. Because information, circling back to Zazen, Buddha's meditation, you can literally learn it in 5 minutes. You don't need any more instruction. Because it's a non-doing practice. Some say, they're still arguing about this, that Zen people that arrived in China, they actually inherited sitting from sitting and forgetting by the Taoists, because the method is too similar. So it's about actually just sitting and directly merging into the Tao. You don't do anything. There's no tricks. There's no techniques. There's no levels. There's no method. You can do Zazen for 50 years. It's the exact same form, exact same method. But every single time, complete different experience. That's a non-doing tradition. A doing tradition, there's a million techniques, million stages, million tricks, million lineages. You got to climb the corporate ladder till you get to the top, and you finally allow to do nothing and merge. Whereas in a non-doing tradition, you start on day one with non-doing and merge. That's what Zen is. And I'm using Zen as an example because it's very popular. Therefore, you can look up a lot of things I'm saying. So if you look at Zen Buddhism, it's non-doing. There's no method. It's just one way. You can learn that in 5 minutes. You can Google it. You can buy a book. You can find a million ways how to sit in Zazen and Zen Buddhism. A million things will pop up on Google. So it doesn't mean you're going to be a great practitioner or enlightened, though. That's just information. You can get in AI, you can get it in Google. Information is not where it's at. Direct experience is where that's at, and we call that transmission. That's why in Zen, the first thing they say is, this is a tradition directly pointing to the truth. A special transmission outside of scriptures and words, directly pointing to the truth. So he said it on day one, the founder of Zen, right? That's why the Sangha is very important. Sangha is the Buddhist term for the meditation community. When you have a meditation community, whether it's online, preferably in person, when you're practicing Zazen or sitting meditation, you're feeding off each other's energy. You're feeding off the vibe. It's very, very important. And afterwards, you get a chance to communicate heart to heart about things, and you study together. That's a transmission, right? That's very different than downloading an app or looking it up in Google and just getting the information. Information is everywhere. It's the same as martial art. Information, you can get it on YouTube, you can buy books, you can take a seminar. It doesn't make you an instructor, it doesn't make you a champion, it doesn't make you good. You have to train your ass off. And when you do train your ass off with that information, you're going to go the wrong way and not get good at it unless you have a good training partner or a good mentor. That's why champions pay so much money in training camp for a good training partner, a pad holder, and also, of course, a mentor. Just getting the information is going to not making you a champion. You can get the information of boxing. There's only 5 punches and a couple defense in a small book. Doesn't make you a world champion, right? I'm using fighting as an example because it's so obvious that maybe the logical common sense would kick in, because we live in an information age, and that can hurt a lot of students. So my advice to you is, yeah, go buy all these standing books. Awesome. But ultimately, please go find a good community and a good teacher, and then you'll go really far. 1 year of a good teacher is like 50 years researching books. Yeah, because in my teenage years, I read a lot of books, but I didn't get good at Kung Fu. Didn't get good at Qigong. It wasn't until I met my teacher and great training partners that I get to train, whether it was martial art or Qigong, that I start getting direct experience, right? So it goes back to the Hindu saying, you don't read about water, you have to drink it. So anyways, best of luck to you. Please message me if you need any more advice. All right, see you guys next episode, guys. Actually, before I go, forgot to tell you. Yeah, talking about sitting today. The sitting lessons released in a student library that's in my Qigong program and is on my only official website, adamchanlive.com. See you next time.